In Magic the Gathering, Indestructible is a term used for cards that can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. There are all kinds of protection effects in Yu-Gi-Oh, but very few cards who both can't be destroyed by battle and card effects specifically. They do exist though, and this list will go over the 10 best. At number 10, we have the legendary Fisherman 3. When summoned, he banishes all monsters your opponent controls, and in addition to being indestructible, he's also just unaffected by spells and traps. And with a body of 2500 attack, that's a pretty hard wall to overcome. The only way to actually remove it is to tribute it for a kaiju, which gets rid of all the monsters on this list, or by a card effect that doesn't destroy, like Castel or Borolo Dragon. Now, the reason he's lower on this list is because he's kind of hard to bring out, requiring you to tribute a specific level 5 card. And that's kind of it. Its summoning effect is great, its protection is great, but it can't attack the turn it banishes monsters with the summoning effect, and his activated effect of being able to do double battle damage isn't much to write home about. Funny thing is, Legendary Fisherman 3 can get rid of Legendary Fisherman 3, since his monster removal effect doesn't destroy. Number 9, Code Talker. Code Talker has a conditional indestructible effect, so it's not always on like Fisherman. Code Talker is only indestructible while it points to a monster, so in order for your opponent to take it out, they usually have to destroy the monsters around Code Talker first before getting rid of him, which honestly isn't that hard. He can only ever point to one of your monsters at a time, and his 1300 attack is very easily beaten over. The reason he's in a better spot on this list than boss monsters like Fisherman 3 is because Code Talker is a combo extender. He's an easy to bring out Link monster that can fit in nearly all Link decks, goes up to 1800 attack while pointing to at least one monster, and has a little bit of added protection on top of that. So the fact that it's a more used and useful card in general places it a little bit ahead, but not by much, as it's still not super great either. Number 8, Kozmoll Wickedwitch. This card, like Code Talker, is conditionally indestructible, in that you have to pay 1000 life points to use its effect, and she only stays indestructible for one turn. But her effect is spell speed too, so you can just wait to use it when you need to, like in response to a dark hole, or being attacked by a stronger monster. And on top of that, she has nearly max level stats for a level 4 monster, clocking in at 1900 attack. Level 4 monsters only go higher than 1900 attack with special card effects, or having downsides like summoning or attacking restrictions, or by being a normal monster, which could be considered a drawback. And on top of excellent stats with a good conditional indestructible effect, it's also just a combo piece in Cosmo decks, and can go into big boss monsters like all other low-level Cosmos. As far as indestructible cards go, Wickedwitch is pretty good. As far as a Cosmo card goes though, it's pretty average. I don't think it even sees play in normal Cosmo decks, to be perfectly honest. Number 7, Spyral Gear Last Resort. This card can give the indestructible status to another Spyral card, in addition to protecting them from targeted effects. And it can give this effect to a really good card who can take advantage of its indestructible status, Spyral Sleeper, who, on Spell Speed 2 effect, can destroy one Spyral card you control and 2 cards your opponent controls. But if equipped with Last Resort, you're basically just destroying 2 of your opponent's cards for free each turn, during both players' turns, whenever you want. This combo is the cornerstone to many Spyral decks, and was for a time a tier 0 deck. But this card merely gives the indestructible effect to something else, so I don't count Sleeper as part of its power. So only number 7 on the list. Number 6, Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale. This card has a conditional indestructible effect in that, on Spell Speed 2, you can detach an XYZ material to make all Lyrilusc you control indestructible, and take no battle damage from attacks with them for the rest of the turn. Since the whole point of this card is to bring it out with as many XYZ materials as possible, You can use its protection a few times before it runs out of steam. And with how fast-paced Yu-Gi-Oh is, those 5 turns it can be indestructible can basically be the whole duel. And on top of that, this card is its own slow win condition. It gains 200 attack for each XYZ material it has attached, and it can attack as many times as it has XYZ materials, and it can attack directly. So on its first turn with 5 materials, it can do 5,000 points of damage. If you use its effect to protect it on your opponent's turn after that, you will be able to do 3,200 points of damage with it during your next turn, which equals out to over 8,000 points of damage. So, if your opponent can't stop this indestructible card in one turn, it's game over. Number 5, Bloom Diva, the Melodious Choir. This card is a fusion monster who is always indestructible, takes no damage from battles, and destroys special summon monsters by ramming into them while doing burn damage. It can also be easily brought out with Ostinato, using monsters from your deck as its fusion materials, and it can bypass the destruction effect of the spell card through its indestructible status. Bloom Diva is a beast boss monster who can destroy other boss monsters, come out easily, and dodge destruction effects. But if you bring it out with Ostinato, you're basically locked out of extra deck summoning, and it can't really swing for game unless it crashes into really strong boss monsters. Plus, you can't really play it outside of its archetype, which kind of limits it more than the next 4 choices on the list who beat it by seeing more play or just by being more versatile. Number 4, Mechquipped Angieneer. This card can give the indestructible status to any monster you control and change it to defense position, all on a spell speed 2 effect. But you have to detach one XYZ material to use the effect, and you can only protect 1 monster per turn. Also, you have to change that monster to defense position for them to gain the indestructible status, so you can't give it to a monster already in defense position. This effect is good. Back in the day, during Master Rule 3, this card was in every deck that used level 3 monsters for its protection and easy availability. It only required 2 level 3 monsters, and could potentially stall out for 2 turns to give some emergency protection. Even today, with Link monsters ruling everything and generic XYZ material seeing less and less play, it's still a solid tech option for level 3 decks. Number 3, Metaion the Timelord. Metaion is always indestructible and can ram himself into monsters to send back all your opponent's monsters to their hand. This kind of non-destruction removal is super valuable in Yu-Gi-Oh, so it's a great effect. It also even does a little bit of burn damage to boot, making it a great addition to burn decks to both burn and stall out for a turn. And therein lies its downside. It's a level 10 monster, but you can summon it without tributes if you have no monsters. It has 0 attack, but you take no battle damage from attacks with it. Also, it returns to your deck during your standby phase, so it usually only comes out for a turn to bounce your opponent's monsters, and then they just summon a whole bunch of monsters back on their next turn and wait for it to go away, which is still pretty useful. That one card can do all that. Technically, all Time Lords are indestructible, but I think Metaion has the best and most versatile effect outside of the archetype. Number 2, Mecha Phantom Beast Dracossack. This card only is indestructible while tokens are out on the field. It can also generate 2 tokens per turn by detaching an XYZ material, and it can use one of those tokens to destroy a card your opponent controls, all on a 2600 attack body and generic materials to bring out. Dracossack is half the reason rank 7 monsters are arguably the best rank to go into. Or second best. I don't think much things can beat just the pure versatility of the rank 4 engine. Now, all Mecha Phantom Beasts are indestructible while token is out, and I made it a point to only pick 1 monster from an archetype for the video, and Dracossack is the best out of the bunch. He saw lots of play, was a primary contributor to one of the best decks in the game's history, Dragon Rulers, and brings up the power level of rank 7 engines as a whole for just existing. He could have easily been the number 1 on this list, if it wasn't for the fact that I think the actual number 1 was a little bit more impactful. Number 1, Beelze of the Diabolic Dragons. Now, Beelze was not involved in as many best decks in history like Dracossack, but Beelze was such a monster of a card that he popularized the use of non-destruction removal in decks. You know, next to Stardust Dragon. People were so afraid of Beelze that everyone was scrambling for an Arc Honor Knight to out him. This was also back before Kaijus and Castel was a thing. When you think of indestructible boss monsters, I bet Beelze would come to mind. Beelze is a level 8 synchro monster who requires a dark type tuner and 1 or more non-tuners to bring out. Not exactly generic, but some of the best tuners are dark type, so not super hard to work with. And Beelze is kind of the reason dark tuners are more highly valued than other attribute tuners. He is always indestructible and has a monster body of 3000 attack and defense baseline, making him one of the most powerful indestructible monsters in the game. And on top of that, if you do manage to beat over it for damage, or bring out a stronger monster, you gain attack equal to any battle damage you take. Also, you gain attack if you take any effect damage while it's out, which is not the best effect in the world, I might add. He's basically just a big beat stick that's hard to get rid of. Your opponent can always get rid of Dracossack by just destroying its tokens first. They can get rid of Timelords by just waiting for them to go away on their own, but if you don't have an out to Beelze, it's game over. There is no beating over it, as it can just eventually get strong enough to kill anything you bring out. And because of this completely game-changing card, you'd be hard-pressed to find any kind of somewhat competitive deck not having multiple ways to non-destruction remove monsters in one way or another. Otherwise, they'll just auto-lose to a single Beelze. I mean, technically, same can be said about assembled Nightingale, but Beelze is a little bit more easy to bring out and versatile, believe it or not. Beelze still scares people even today, and that's why it's the number 1 indestructible card. And that's it for the video. Do you think there's an even better indestructible card than Beelze? Maybe you think Dracossack is better. Honestly, very good case could be made for Dracossack instead. If you have any suggestions for future videos like this one, just let me know.